It's in a butter. We have enough. Megan's not sure because. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a different person.
No, that's the same person.
Oh, hi. Hi, Dan. Yeah. Oh, there you are. Okay. That's
No, exactly. One. You mean the hot mic syndrome? I know that's a syndrome, right? But anyway.
my friend brought a brand new Yeah, I just wanted to talk about after the meeting. But I can show you minutes what we decided. And I think it was had to do with surface versus subsurface. I can bring it. No, yeah, that was something language, and yeah, but that's why, you know, I started buying here, yeah. And you realize that if you don't do that, it's always a defense. Good chunk of your purpose.
I live in Stoke grocery shop.
So that's probably one of the change. Thanks. Okay, we're after 7 o'clock. We are on. Adam's not in the booth because he's controlling it remotely, which is great that we can do that. We have 4 members. I had forgotten that Rick is a butter, so he's not able to do it. Megan's out for health reasons. I was hoping Ben Romano would be here, but he was not here for the first half of the meeting. So, are you okay with us going with 4 members as opposed to 5?
Yeah, as long as it can be agreed or the decision can be made with the number here.
Right, it can be. We can go down to 3. The problem is 3, you have to be unanimous. If
I may speak.
Yeah.
I understand what you're agreeing to. If it's a 2-2 vote, the motion does not pass. So knowing that, you know, so if 2 of us are for and 2 of us are against, you lose. You follow me? Everybody agree with that?
Unless it's a motion to.
So a tie vote, the motion doesn't pass. Am I correct on that?
A tie vote, the motion does not, an affirmative motion does not pass.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So knowing that, how do you, okay.
How much time do we have until the person arrives?
No, unfortunately, I got a note today from Vice Chair that she's unable to make it due to health reasons, and we have a 3rd alternate, but he wasn't here at the first meeting. He isn't coming tonight, so apparently so. And we have one person in Florida because his mother-in-law died, and so he can't make it.
Let's proceed.
It's kind of a perfect storm in a sense.
I think we have the information needed. So I don't want this to become excessive. So having said that, Peter's right that a 2-2 tie would be we would not be able to pass anything with a 2-2 vote. We can with a 3-1 vote though, or 3, yeah, or 4-0. Okay, thank you.
No, wait, I'm sorry.
Let's
Let's
proceed.
push it forward or
No,
let's push
proceed
it tonight?
tonight.
Okay, all right. I just want, you know, this is gonna go on the record, so.
Yeah. We do have a quorum, obviously, and we just do give that option to the applicant. This is a continuation of the continuing hearing for 511 for Unitil Service Corporation, appealing the administrative decision made by the Select Board regarding Article 201-4E18, the Town of Kingston zoning ordinance, whereby the Board of Selectmen denied permission to use for Unitil to use herbicides as proposed, which states the following is prohibited use in the aquifer protection zone. We did get a study done by a hydrogeologist. Am I saying that correctly, Dana?
Yes.
Dana Truslow? Is it Dana too, or Dana?
Yes.
Okay, I want to make sure I'm getting all this correct. So if you'd like to come up and present the results of your findings here. Yeah. Oh. Okay, yes, we do have copies of the report that Dan has been talking about. If you are in the audience and want to come up and get them, they're at the end of the table here.
And I also have a diagram, which I know is probably hard to see. I don't know where I should orient it.
Just put it right next to you there, and then you can turn it around. If anybody wants to come up, they can take a look at it. We don't have that many people here.
Can I borrow this person's chair?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. For the record, my name is Hannah Truslow. I'm a professional geologist in New Hampshire and a certified geologist in the state of Maine, and a professional hydrogeologist with my company, Truslow Resource Consulting, located in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And I was asked by the Zoning Board of Adjustment to review the Unitil request for appeal, to look at the situation with regards to groundwater quality and the water resources in the aquifer protection zone, and had a chance to look through the data from the chemical perspective, from the hydrogeologic perspective, and then because I was able to get a file of the actual right-of-way, I was able to map that using geological information or geographic information systems to give me a sense of where these resources co-occurred. So to back up to the beginning, the understanding of the work is that Unitil has applied for an appeal to use herbicides, and there were 7 herbicides listed that were possibly going to be used in the right-of-way, which runs from northeast to southwest Kingston, and it runs through the Aquifer Protection District. Based on looking at the background research and also speaking with Chris Maltrup from the Unitil, the work is going to be completed by a New Hampshire licensed contractor, and at this time they're expecting Vegetation Control Services or Lucas Tree that are both certified commercial pesticide applicators in the state of New Hampshire to do the work. And also my understanding is that the actual licensed applicator is actually required to do the work, not just an employee of the applicator, so that they're trained for all the safeguards that are required. The last time spraying was conducted was in about 2018, and they anticipate spraying every 5 years. That was another consideration I used when I was looking at all the information. The application method is low volume of herbicides from handheld applicators, and only the vegetation that's being targeted, which are plants that'll grow taller than 15 feet, and vines, and then some exotic invasive plant species as well, will be the target of the spraying. A lot of the vegetation has been controlled over the years with mechanical controls, meaning they're mowed on a regular basis as well. By law, no spraying is allowed within about, well, exactly 25, but hopefully with some addition depending on the location, 25 feet of surface water, and that includes ponds, lakes, streams, rivers, and wetlands. And as we all know, there are many areas of surface water within the power line right-of-way here in Kingston. Also by law, weather conditions are closely monitored before spraying. Days when herbicides are used have low winds to prevent the drift of herbicides from the area that's being sprayed. The conditions need to be dry, so there's no wash off of chemicals or migration onto the soil and into the water. There's also a requirement that no spraying is allowed within 250 feet of public water supply wells if they're bedrock, or 400 feet from gravel-packed public water supply wells. And there are 4 such wells along the power line, and there's one that's also very close to the power line. So I took an overlay of maps using the Granite mapping program, which is available online. Took the power line itself, mapped the wetlands that are included there from the National Wetland Inventory Database, the presence of the aquifer protection zones, all streams and other water bodies, as well as conservation lands. And those conservation included those that had conservation easements on them, as well as town-owned properties. So, using this analysis, there's approximately 31,000 feet of power line running through Kingston. Of this length, approximately 24,000 of this is within the Aquifer Protection Zone, and 11,260 feet is within Zone A, which is considered the higher value aquifer area. Looking at where these wetlands, the wells, the conservation lands, the river, stream, lake, pond crossings, actually there are no lake crossings, but there are many stream crossings. It looks like there's going to be an elimination of a large length of that power line, to the point where about more than a third of it will be eliminated from spraying. The one thing to consider is when I looked at this potential for groundwater contamination is it's the shallow groundwater that's most likely to be contaminated, because when it's being sprayed, if it lands on the soil, it's going to take wash off into the soil. The chemicals that are being used based on chemical activities cling fairly tightly to the soil and don't migrate all that much to groundwater. Therefore, the most vulnerable areas that could contaminate groundwater or surface water are going to be around surface water bodies, which includes wetlands. So with that consideration, and the amount of land that will be eliminated from spraying, I think that the application of these herbicides on this 5-year time zone is going to have little impact on groundwater quality. So I can go through much more detailed evaluation of what I did, if that's of interest. That's basically my summary. I did look at some of the articles that have been written about the glyphosate, which is the key chemical ingredient of Roundup, which has gotten a lot of play these days. And, you know, there are some concerns. Most of the studies that have been published so far, and the agencies feel, even international agencies feel, that there's not a lot of evidence that there is either carcinogenic or mutagenic impacts from this. There are some fairly large areas in the southeast and Midwest and Mexico where they're getting consistent surface water readings, but these are in areas where there's really heavy application of this on a regular basis on agricultural fields. I think in this case here, with the little bit of application that's been happening, it's not really comparable to the agricultural areas in the Midwest and the Southeast. So the summary that I would have is that because of this, you know, co-occurrence of these features that eliminate so much of the right-of-way from being sprayed, and the characteristics of the chemicals being used, that there should be little impact on water quality, but there are a couple of considerations that if the zoning board feels they want to go forward and approve this appeal or approve this variance, that Unitil will confirm that the areas that I've outlined on these maps 1, 2, and 3 will not be treated. And it would be very helpful to have an estimate of the volume of herbicide that was used during the 2018 herbicide application work. And I think in concert with that, to have some sense to present again, if this comes up again to, you know, the town for future applications. Because storm drains aren't really surface water, but they provide a direct outlet to surface water. The other thing that I think should be done, if there are storm drains within 25 feet of the right-of-ways of the areas that are going to be sprayed, they should be identified and given the same setbacks as a surface water body. The Unitil contractor should avoid the use of the low soil absorption products. A few of the products listed have lower soil absorption than others. From doing the reading, I understand that they're often mixed together. So I think if that can be avoided so that only the higher soil absorption products are used, I think in the long run that will be better for the groundwater quality. The other thing that I would suggest is that a Natural Heritage Bureau survey be conducted. A Natural Heritage Bureau is a request that's made to the state of New Hampshire that maintains a list of rare and endangered species. They often co-occur with wetland areas, but that way the herbicide applicator can know that they're close to any of these potential species, and also give them ample setback and not spray in those areas. And one of the target species of the invasive species listed was Phragmites. However, Phragmites is typically associated with wet areas. So because of that, if they're encountered, they should also not be sprayed unless there's a specific plan for application of Phragmites, because I think you're more able to have impacts from water quality if you're spraying Phragmites in a wet area, even if it's not, you know, within these zones that I've identified on the map. All right, that sums up my evaluation.
from the board?
Yeah, anybody first while I find out what my question is.
Okay, I noticed that you state in the report that in your conversation with Chris that Unitil does not map wetlands.
Right.
And so how does the applicator, other than looking down and finding his feet are wet, identify what areas to avoid?
I think that's
A good question, sorry, for Chris, I guess, but if you can come up and just talk into a mic down here, it'd be helpful to ask questions.
Yeah, so Chris Mulcher, Manager of Forestry Operations, Unitil. So it's really up to the contractors just to keep within that 25 feet of surface water. So as long as they're staying out of that 25 feet of surface water, that basically takes care of all the wetland issues. This map that she has up there that kind of shows all the wetlands really would already be in the no spray zone anyway if they're following the New Hampshire rules, which they are.
Okay.
So I guess,
Yeah.
I think that there was a good question, if I don't mind me following up.
Yeah,
with
go
that.
ahead.
You know, if the applicator's out there and they don't observe wet conditions because it's July, August, you know, we all know that wetlands occur in places that aren't always wet. So, would you take these chunks of area that have been designated and say we're just staying out of those and we're not even gonna enter those? Because that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, I think for the purposes of this, in the town, this is, you know, if we're looking to get approval for wetland areas, and those are specific wetland areas that we're gonna avoid, then we have absolutely no problem doing that. When we submit our maps for the special permit, there are certain things they require, and it's wells. And the presence of wetlands is not really one of those things. It's required for the special permit. But if these are the areas that we want to restrict spraying, then we can absolutely abide by it. And I think what we would do is Dan and I would get together and have our maps indicate on these so that we'd have a permanent, we'd have a permanent location of where those are to avoid in the future.
Right, so this brings up another question I had is, are you able to provide shape files of the maps that you provided in maps 1, 2, and 3 to Unitil so that they can put that on an electronic file? The reason I'm asking that is the applicator is going to have these well radii that are out there that they may not be able to, you don't always see where well caps and things like that are, especially if there's stuff going around. It would be a help if the applicator, person who's doing the application, has an iPad or some phone or anything with shape files on it that says, don't do this here. And so he just sees his little dot of where he is, or she, and avoids the areas that are designated wetlands, even if it's just because of species identification and they're not currently wet. And the invisible well radius is that they have to avoid, and that they be able to identify, presumably if they were going to take out Phragmites, they know what that looks like.
Yeah, Phragmites is not one on the list of invasives that we have.
Okay, I mean the difference between Phragmites, different types of Phragmites reeds that some are invasive, not all, but they are wetland indicators. So, if they're able to identify that and say, okay, this has got to be wetlands, or if they had their device with them that says I'm coming into a mapped wetland area, I think that's probably the only way an applicator is going to be able to safely dodge all these zones. And I think that would have probably, if they're under new conditions, that have to be a condition that the applicator have access either to good maps or to a GPS device.
It would be fairly simple for her and I to get together and, because I have I could almost do it just based on looking at that map and using our own map, but between the two of us, in our GIS department and using her maps, we can kind of overlay those wetlands onto our maps. And then these maps are what the applicators use when they're out there, and they have a pole by pole, you know, they'll know exactly on which pole to stop, where to spray, where not to spray. It would be very straightforward once we just get those maps together.
Okay. That's good. Most of these things that Dan has listed are conditions precedent, so that we'd have to have a means of having you provide the information before we can give you final approval on it, and conditional approval. And that would be, for example, if we used all these recommendations as conditions, one of the things we'd need is the volume. And I remember last time we met, we talked about one of the ways that you could do this was if you had less than 25 gallons. And I think we decided the number of linear feet that you're doing, that probably wasn't a reasonable number, but getting a volume estimate would be good. Storm drains, you have those listed on the maps, right? Or are you
I
able?
don't have them on these maps, but those should be available from town hall.
Right, and at any rate, those should be visible, I would think, for an applicator in the field, to maintain 25-foot distance from the.
Yeah, again, that would be a good thing if there is a map layer available. That's another thing we could add onto our maps.
Okay. And for then the low adsorption products. So obviously you want high adsorption products so that they cling to the particles and don't drift down into groundwater. What's the cutoff level that you would recommend? I think we can't just say avoid low. I think we need to be specific and list the chemicals. I'm looking at the chart, and quite frankly, on a relative basis, I don't know.
Well, it looks like from the products that are suggested here, the ones with the highest soil absorption are the glyphosate products, so that's Rodeo, Aquamine, Aquamaster, and Garland 4 Ultra. Look like they're the most.
They're over 2,000 liters per kilogram.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Mesapir and the stock, or the Mesapir products less so, but the Crenite and the Escort have the lowest soil absorption, so I would say stay away from those.
So let's Crenite S and Escort XP. But do you think the other ones at 100 are okay? I mean, that's significantly lower than the 2000s and 1600s, but all right. I
can make that more specific if you want.
Yeah, I just wrote those two down. You know, maybe you can say less than 100. It's soil adsorption coefficient of less than 100 liters per kilogram. Okay, so that way, if something else comes in, the Natural Heritage Bureau survey for identifying rare and endangered species. How long does that take?
We've probably done it before, but it's just an online function, and then somebody in Concord puts together, a report of what's out there, and it takes 1 week maximum usually. The only thing that might be a little complicating, it's a long distance. Quite often, when I request one, it's for a smaller property.
Right, and this is a linear.
Not many acres over many feet, so I'm not sure exactly how that would work.
Yeah.
Usually you get them on a target zone.
On what? A
target zone, like.
Oh, I see. So you look in specific areas take samples as opposed to. And Chris, you said pregnites was not on your list.
That's not on our list, no.
Okay, that was in one of the permit subsets, so I just figured it might be on the list.
Yeah, it may have been on the special permit, or just listing all of the invasives that could be treated. That's not one of ours.
All right, that's good then.
Or we could just leave it in. So okay, so Bureau study. Did you find yours? Okay. Okay. I think one other thing we have to discuss is how we ensure compliance, but we can.
You know, it's interesting both our names are Peter because I have almost exactly the same things that you had.
Really kind of
I said, well, we answered that one. One that we didn't ask, and I just really a clarification on page 4. You talk about water solubility. Is that a definition, or is that pertaining to these products? It said water soluble measure amount. You give the definition. It says the water soluble biophosphate products here are high relative to other products. So I was a little confused on that.
Okay,
right?
well, basically, when I looked at the Ecotox database and water solubility was listed there, and so I was using those numbers, and actually I converted from moles per liter to grams per liter.
Okay.
But you don't see that on the table that I gave you. But the glyphosate and krenite were a higher water solubility than the
So
others.
the other one is biodegradation in the half-lives. Were you talking about those chemicals, or was that again a definition of what because you come up with 3.5 to 5.3, 5.13, 3.55 to 5.13.
Yeah, those all refer back to table 3.
Okay, so it's those chemicals.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was just listing a range.
And that's fine. I was just calculating how long before it's pretty much gone.
Okay.
Right,
no
so
worries.
in 3 to 5 weeks, again, I don't want to get too technical, half of it's gone, another 3 to 5 weeks, half of that's gone, half of that's gone. So roughly, I think about 30 days, you're pretty much zero. I mean, nothing is ever zero.
Well, that actually, the half-life is in days, so in 3.5 days, it's half degraded, and then it's another quarter degraded in another.
Right, that's what I did, quarter then an eighth, but I don't want to get into the minutia.
Right, but it's not months, it's days.
No, days.
Or not, sorry, not weeks, but days, yeah. So
Well,
yeah.
I converted the days to weeks, so roughly 4 weeks, you pretty
Yeah.
much gone, you know. Again,
Oh, I see.
my mindset, you know. Okay. Okay, I gotta, well, never mind. Okay, so we've covered 25 feet, and we've licensed contractors. Would you happen to know their training on that? I mean, you were talking about phagmitis, right? Who knows what it's phagmitis communis that everybody wants to know. But it's if I'm correct, I think they look like the beep the wrong run tail thing, right? I mean, we all went by the swamps and you see this thing about the thing. Well, that's phagmitis is a science teacher, what can I say? Don't know why I remember that from my class, but I do. How much training do they have? Because wetlands specific plants will be there. That's one of the ways you tell a wetland, no matter how much water it's got. You know. So my question is, do you know anything about their licensing and procedures and what they need to know?
I mean,
And if you don't, I can understand why you wouldn't.
I don't know a lot about the individual, each individual person's training.
Right, okay.
Sure, there is between the two of them. All I know is that they are all certified applicators, and they have a supervisor applicator above them.
This was just to make me feel a little better, a little more comfortable type question.
Yeah, as she had mentioned before, they are both licensed in the state, and they've been doing work for a long time in the state.
Okay.
So that's pretty much the best I can do.
It appears most of these chemicals are. No, you say. I'm thinking of bonding versus binding. they don't bond to the chemicals, they bind to the physical soil.
So it's, they're ionic, so
Okay.
That is bonding, yeah.
they would bond to like carbon sites and
Oh,
clays and
okay,
things
yeah,
like that,
yeah,
so.
and everything's carbon.
They would tend to, go for organics, clays, those kinds of things that already have a charge to them, and typically bind to those, so soil has a lot of organic matter in it, marine deposits, clays and silts, those kinds of things.
Okay. I found of interest, just to, that there is little evidence of mutagens and carcinogens. I'm looking at page 5 again. And it's, I think, the last paragraph. No, sorry, it's the third paragraph. Other literature indicate with little evidence that these health effects of these health effects at this time. So, based on the studies of these chemicals, where it's been used a lot, I'm going to use that term, there is very little evidence that they're harmful, I guess is a generic way to say it.
The tests that they've done on lab animals and
Well, yeah,
mice and
right.
those kinds of analyses.
You see where I am, right under biochemical.
Yeah, no, I see
right.
that. There's studies on bacterial resistance and those kinds of things, but
I worry about bacteria. I have no problem with mice, but no, not with bacteria.
Is it going to mutate? Is it
Well, that's the bacteria.
cause cancer? Those are the two big factors that I was looking at. So, and that's mostly with regards to human impacts.
Okay. I guess that's pretty much my questions.
I do have something to say.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So,
Go ahead.
Ms. Truslow, when I'm looking at your report at the bottom of page 5, you say that most of the products proposed for use will adsorb to soil particles and are less likely to travel through the soil to groundwater. And when I read this statement, it tells me that there is potential of product to actually reach the groundwater, to go through the soil and do that.
It could, yeah.
Now, is that all the products that were initially proposed to be used, or the ones that we're selecting to be used?
The ones that have the higher absorption are much less likely to migrate because they cling to the soil particles, but I don't think that we can say that there's never going to be any transport, but that with that strong affinity, that there's a much lower chance of migration, or that pulling apart from the soil particle before it has a chance to degrade.
Okay.
And yes, it's the seven chemicals that they proposed using, that they've been approved to use by the Hampshire herbicide application people. So that I think, Chris, you said you weren't planning to use all of them. You had some specific ones that you were going to use.
Yeah, I mean, last year, I had mentioned, they used a mixture of rodeo and escort, and a surfactant that made it adhere to the leaves. So it was those two, but there are lots of different mixes you can choose from.
Right, so if we recommended that you do not use escort because it's a it's a low soil absorption product, then you have alternatives.
Yes.
For that, yeah.
I just have a question, says he asked a question. Any of these persistent? We'll move it up the food chain.
Well, the bioconcentration is sort of a factor in there. It basically says how much gets concentrated in the body of whatever species they're looking at.
Right.
Most of these aren't going to be persistent in that way, like a
DDT
or a PFAS or anything like that.
I noticed you get Garlon or Ultra as having the high, at the 97.7 bioconcentration. What does that mean to us in terms of it's not its really persistence, it's the fact that it gets into the plant and stays there, is that?
Well, it fits into, what that measures is if this would came in contact with a fish or, you know, aquatic species. This
Okay.
is how much they can take up into their body. But I did look up the limits on the bioconcentration factor, and I believe that 1,000, anything below 1,000
That's
is
a reference.
assumed to be acceptable. And I did not put that in the report, so I apologize.
Okay, that's fine, as long as we know that bioconcentration. Less than 1,000 liters per kilogram. It's considered safe.
So that's acceptable by the state of New Hampshire, is that?
Well, that's an EPA.
EPA,
That's
yeah.
an EPA measure. And I can provide references for that too,
Okay.
like that.
So, but one hopes that if you avoid any direct contact with water, or wetlands, or surface water, it's not, because that obviously would get into the water before it has a chance to degrade, whereas if it's sitting in the soil or sitting in the plant, it degrades over time, you know, a week or so. One would presume that safe application would keep it from getting into the water within the week or so of its application. It wouldn't migrate or move laterally into the surface water.
Right, and that's kind of the purpose of staying
Perfect.
away from
Staying away
surface
from
water,
yeah.
is that you don't have that direct pathway. So, you know, rain is something that would carry it into, you know, some sort of a soil surface layer, but because they have to be careful about how much rain happens, or if there's even moisture on leaves and all that sort of thing,
Is there,
rain happens, so there's no
Right.
guarantee that you're not gonna have rain, but.
along that line, how many days after the application, you know, obviously you've got about a half or whatever for half-life, but how many days after an application would be considered safe for it to rain? So they go out and say, oh, it's gonna be a nice day today, we're gonna apply, and it's dry, and the next rain day, you know, rains buckets.
I don't have an exact number on that. I know from my own use of this and my poison ivy, I read the label and it says, you know, it should be okay within 6 hours. But you usually leave at least 24 hours because you don't want
it washing off the
that
leaves.
wash off and then to get into other root systems besides what you're targeting.
Right. So Chris, do you know if they have any forecasting requirements for application?
I'm not sure about the requirements specifically, other than that, you know, we're not supposed to, they don't spray on rainy or windy days. It's
Right.
really as far as I know on that. I've been told that they dry very quickly within 15-20 minutes usually, but like she said, I don't know exactly how long of a time frame that is from when it rains, and we don't really have that direct on the
I mean, there's two factors in here. One is if you're trying to be effective with a herbicide, you want to be able to spray it on and have it stay on that leaf and get it absorbed into the
You don't
plant.
want to wash it.
That would, yeah, that would be.
You don't want to wash it off, so it doesn't work, and then you have to come back and do it again. But the question I have from our standpoint is, if it's sprayed on and then rain 12 hours later, for example, with that degraded enough. I mean, I know it's dry now, but it's gonna get wet again once it's rained on it.
Well, just also something of note, we've never actually had to go back and respray an area. They go through once and that's it.
Any other questions?
Only, you ask questions, cause me to ask questions.
Yeah.
Wouldn't the half-life kind of be like an insurance policy against that anyway, unless it rains right away? You know,
Well, yeah.
it's gonna break down so quick,
You know,
you know.
5.5 days.
Yeah.
That's kind of hard to predict that or not, but.
Well, yeah, but after every day it doesn't rain, you know, I'm just, you know how we work, right?
Yeah. I mean, you can't,
Yeah. We're weird people, right, that we think this way.
we're trying to find out
Right.
if this has a significant enough impact that it could affect.
Yep.
And I think, your statement that would have little impact on groundwater, assuming that you avoid the surface water areas, should be sufficient as long as the company agrees to the conditions.
Any public comment?
I want to say a couple more things, just for clarification. So the products being used, like the stalker herbicide, the rodeo, the aquamaster, like these are all different products that you could use.
Could
Could use.
And
And they all have different soil absorption coefficients, different water solubilities, all different half-lives. So shouldn't we figure out which products are going to be used?
Well, I think what under Dan's recommendation for avoiding the low soil adsorption products, which are Crenite S and Export SP, we would say that it would be my proposal that we would say that they don't use those because
Don't use which ones?
Crenite S and Export SP are both, their soil adsorption factors are 38 and 34.7 compared to a lot of them are 2,000, 1,600, and 100. So we could specify that will avoid the use of low soil absorption products, including Crenite S and Export SP, or products with adsorption rates of less than 100 liters per kilogram.
Okay.
And what that does is that stuff with a higher soil adsorption rate gets hung up in the dirt and is less likely to drift down into groundwater. Yeah.
That term less likely is very concerning to me.
Yeah, I know.
It's very concerning to me, and I don't like it.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, that sounds very vague.
It is, but, you know, without being able to know how much rain you're gonna get the day after application or things like that, it's, I mean, this is basically why we hire people that are able to analyze this and say,
If I may,
Yeah.
unfortunately, cannot give in science that definitive an answer. I was just talking to him about the police work, like when you do an investigation, the investigator never says he's not guilty. He says, not sufficient evidence to. And this is kind of like that. You know, you've got to say it's less likely, because you can't say it will not. Nobody in their right mind can say that. So you've got to give the best answer you can give, which is terrible, and that is, it's less likely to happen. You know, it's less likely that we'll die tonight, but we could. You know, and that's an awful thing in science, because that's a constant thing that used to drive me nuts.
Isn't scientific accuracy like 95% or higher?
No. The problem with that is like everything else. What professor did you have and what professor taught you?
Okay, all right. Also, I want to know the how many gallons are going to be used.
yes, and that's, I would propose that be, if we take these recommendations, that's one of the things that they are gonna provide is an estimate of the volume of herbicide used during the 2018 herbicide application work. Do you have yet any idea? I know we talked about this
So
last
that,
time.
the applicators do submit that information to the state after they're done, so.
Okay, so you have
we
the-
will be able to get.
You'll be able to get that data, those data fairly quickly.
So, I mean, the data would include also some of the area in Plastow, because we don't own, we're not owning Kingston.
Right.
So we're just trying to go into Plastow. But I was looking at the maps and it looks like roughly a third of the total area was in Plastow, 2/3 of the total area was in Kingston, so, I mean, it'll be
Extrapolate.
an estimate, I won't be able to give you exactly in Kingston,
Right.
but I could give you a pretty close estimate.
Can I ask a question? Are you gonna be working with him? I heard you're gonna have different meetings. And what I'm getting at, and rather than be tied down in the minutia of how many gallons and how many grams and how many, is it possible that, and if I'm throwing you under the bus, please let me know I'm throwing you under the bus here, because I don't mean to, that they could work together and based on her recommendations? Because what I'm hearing from you, and maybe I'm hearing it wrong, is we don't want to make a decision tonight until we get that information.
No, my proposal is that we do make a decision tonight, that we have a conditional approval.
Right.
And,
But how would you approve something if you don't know how many gallons?
well, but the conditional approval is that this information is provided. Now,
Oh, okay.
you know,
Okay,
all these, this list that I took right out of the report, you know, confirming the areas, maps 1, 2, and 3 are areas that will not be treated.
Right.
And, we can add to that and say that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. What I was hearing was, can you get us this information, I was jumping to, so we can make a decision.
I'm thinking that like that first one, they probably can confirm that as long as they have maps that, you know, the GIS is something that they can share. And if that's agreeable to Dan, you know, those maps can be provided and they can extrapolate it. I'm concerned that the person in the field should have that map, those shape files, to be able to figure out.
No, I understand now what you're talking about.
Okay, so it would be a conditional approval. Some of this are conditions precedent.
Yeah, I have a number of conditions also. So.
Yeah, so what we do is we lay out all the conditions.
Yep.
And provide them in written format, so Robin has them copy. And then if it's certain things like providing the estimated volume of herbicides, things like that, as soon as they get that and the natural resource Bureau survey, and the storm drains identified on the mapping, whatever, you know, these things that we're gonna put in there, that they need to show and state ahead of time. Once they've got the maps and they come back and say,
You're satisfied?
here's that, we convert it to a final approval. And, that would then come back, we don't have another hearing, they just bring it in, demonstrate that they've met these requirements. Some of them are obviously conditions antecedent, or sorry, that follow, that, you know, for example, not spring phragmites or whatever. And most of them are the state regulations, and they're not gonna put those in because they already exist. But not spraying in wetlands, identified wetlands, that's gonna be something that they're gonna have to adhere to in the field, and we can offer to the selectmen that this is their conditional approval, and selectmen have the enforcement authority if they want to send, you know, if they want to send somebody from the Conservation Commission out, you know, to check on it, they can do that, but if we are not an enforcement body, we can set the conditions. And basically we just trust that they do it. So, any other question? Mike, yeah?
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to the real basics here. The fact that you're wanting to go this route is obviously, or I presume is an economic decision on the utilities part, right? The means by which to deal with the species.
I wouldn't really put it at economics.
Really?
No, I mean, actually, at the moment, we're probably spending more because we're doing the original mowing and then following it up with spraying. We did mowing and no spraying, we saved money. In the long term, yes, it starts to gain, you know, we will start saving money over time, but really it's partly because of that, but I think more of it really is the stewardship and best management practices angle of how to manage right of ways. Like, these are the best management practices for the utility industry, is to use herbicide.
I understand that, but, I mean,
There really isn't.
but what you're saying is to do it mechanically would not be significantly more expensive.
Not at the moment, no.
Okay,
But as time goes on, it would become more expensive.
understood, but we're talking about now. So immediately would have no impact on your rates if you were to go to use mechanical means as opposed to,
It wouldn't affect the rates, no.
okay.
So why don't you want to do that? Why do you want to use herbicides? I mean, can you just clarify that? I mean,
Well, as I just stated, it's the best management practice for the industry to
Best
manage right
management
of ways over the long
practice.
term. It's the best for the biodiversity, best for pollinators, it's the best for access, it's the best, it's best for mitigating regrowth of these mulberry species that take over an area annually. As I stated in last month, there's just a number of reasons that it's helpful for sightlines, for the regrowth. Over time, if those stems multiply, you're getting more and more undesirable species growing as time goes on. But yeah, a lot of it is biodiversity is affected. It's better for birds, it's better for plants, it's better for a lot of things, and so that's why we go that route.
I think there is an economic advantage over time, because, as you say, if you're cutting, it sprouts back, and you gotta they also can target specific species that are gonna grow up towards the power lines that they don't really care about the other stuff that's, if you mow, it's indiscriminate, whereas if you just target the species that are gonna cause you problems, you don't have to be quite as, you can eliminate certain plants and not others. One thing,
It ends up being a far lower impact over time. That's really low.
So mowing, you wipe out everything. This way you wipe out the undesirable species and keep the species you want that benefit the environment.
Right, in the future, we hope to not have to do the mowing, and we just be people walking through on backpacks. You're eliminating that whole piece of equipment going through and indiscriminately slashing everything.
what? The public? Public, yes, thank you. As any member of the public would like to, make a comment on this plan? And if you come on up and, state your name and where you live.
I'm Dana Akers. I live at 16 Minefus Lane in Kingston. I'm not an expert nor an attorney, but I carefully reread the ordinance, and I made some notes. I'll just read directly from the notes, and then I can just hand you this, so you don't have to write it all down. And then at the end, I got
May I
one.
ask what ordinance you're pertaining to? What ordinance, which one are you pertaining to?
The Aquifer Protection Ordinance.
Yeah, and can you just get the mic a little closer to you and speak up?
This thing doesn't work. The Aquifer Protection Ordinance.
Right. It's 201.4E is the.
With very good intentions, and crossing all the Ts and dotting all the Is, you guys retained the experts, and that's why we're here again. But however, with all due respect, I believe the board erred in not denying the application last week after rereading the ordinance. Section 201.2.1.p clearly defines herbicides as hazardous for the purposes of this ordinance, with only one possible exception, which I will quote. unless and except to the extent that anyone engaging in such an activity can demonstrate the contrary to the satisfaction of the planning board. Note that that is not this board, that is the planning board, it's not a typo. The planning board is mentioned throughout the ordinance, and section 201.9 says, quote, "The provisions of the Aquifer Protection District shall be administered by the planning board." No such presentation has been made to the planning board, thus herbicides are hazardous for the purposes of this ordinance. Section 201.4.E.18 prohibits hazardous materials in excess of 25 gallons, and thus the select board was correct in their decision. That is my understanding is all that the ZBA is being asked to determine. Was the select board correct? That this is an appeal, or at least that's all that the public has been notified is being determined. There is a provision for special exceptions, 201.4.8, which does fall under the ZBA. However, both public notices mention only an appeal of the select board decision. In just the past month or so, I've seen numerous notices from the ZBA for other applications, such as the Summit Truck Stop, where the notice stated in bold print that the applicant is seeking a special exception. That has not happened here. So to be consistent with other public notices given, this should not be considered unless and until such notice is given. Now, maybe to save time, this could be discussed hypothetically to avoid another meeting. I think the special exception criteria was written for development that didn't meet some specific criteria, not to do an end run around determining hazardous criteria for which a procedure is provided for in the ordinance. If you do agree in a future meeting to address a special exception application without any planning board satisfaction, note that herbicides are then defined by the ordinance, regardless of what any experts say, as hazardous. The first criteria that must be met for a special exception is that spraying a hazardous, by definition, material will, quote, "will not detrimentally affect the quality of the groundwater contained in the aquifer by directly contributing to pollution." I don't see how that criteria can possibly be met. The one additional comment I have that's not in my notes is the expert mentioned something to the extent of should you approve this variance. And as you know, a variance is a step beyond a special exception, and that certainly hasn't been discussed in any notice.
That was just, I think that's part of her report, but in this case, we know that it wasn't the variance being sought. It was an appeal of administrative decision, and the state rules on appeals of administrative decisions that this is a decision of the select board, that can't go to the planning board, that has to go to the ZBA, and thank you. But it does bring up a good issue as to
I urge all of you to look at the ordinance and determine exactly under what law, this is the law, the ordinance, under what law you're approving this under special conditions. I don't think it's provided.
it's not a special, yeah, as I said,
Thank you for your consideration.
yeah, the planning board may grant a conditional use permit. Let's see, that's for industrial, commercial, multifamily, residential, and sand and gravel excavation. This is not a use. Try to figure this out.
I think they're appealing a decision, so we're just saying whether their decision is correct or not.
Well, in that case, I mean, and I would want to look at the state regulations on appeals administrative decision, because it's my intention that one of the findings of fact that I've written down for this is that the select board correctly denied Unitil's application to use herbicides in the active protection zone in accordance with the article, and you read them all, which prohibits the use of hazardous materials, and but the zoning board is authorized to grant relief from the regulation on a case-by-case basis if conditions can be met that will protect the aquifer from the hazards associated with the application of herbicides. I had not seen that there was a special exception criteria, which is really what should have been applied for.
Well, no, they're appealing the decision of the
Right.
The selectmen said no, they're appealing that decision to us.
Right.
Whether the selectmen were correct or not. So
And my point is the selectmen were correct. Let me see if I can find that state.
I didn't bring my statute with me.
On administrative decisions. In theory, we should have, the first hearing said that the selectmen were correct. I mean, that's exactly, the decision was a correct decision. And we should have, we've done research, said you need to apply for a special exception. And that's not what was posted to the public. I mean, theoretically, what we're doing right now is we've been going through this special exception criteria, but applying it to, well,
Special exception says that would be that we're allowing prohibited use to be used.
yeah, but that's exactly what we're doing.
Well, okay, and under prohibited uses.
Or, well, actually, you know what? We're not, because,
Right.
well, yeah, this is where we've got a difference between the aquifer protection zone and the wetlands that have been marked on this map. Dan has gone through and said these areas may be in the aquifer protection zone, but they're not. They don't have wetlands. You know, these maps are with purple and various colors. Okay. That's septic systems. They require that the applicant provide data reports prepared by a qualified hydrogeologist to assess any potential damage may result from the proposed use. Shall engage such professional systems. Okay, we did that, but we should have been doing that as on a request from them for a special exception.
Well, am I correct that it doesn't fall under the prohibited uses?
No,
under the aquifer protection?
no, it is prohibited.
Where? I don't.
It's H. That's the whole reason why they were
H?
let's see, permitted uses.
I'm looking at page 201, 7.
Right, and then you flip it
Number 8,
over.
and number 8 is commercial and
18.
18.
Use or generation of hazardous materials greater than small quantity generators or greater than 25 gallons of regulated substance except where permitted in association with 14, which is gas stations, and 17, which is manufacturing.
Use of generators greater than small quantity generators.
Yeah, well, they're not generating, so they're using it, so there's 25 gallons.
But they're using less than 25 gallons, am I right?
No, that's the question that we don't.
Yeah, I don't know that.
Oh, boy.
We asked that question last time.
Yeah.
No, I'm with you on this, Pete, because if we don't know if it's over 25 gallons.
We're all in agreement with more than 25 gallons. Check the notes from last week.
Well, we didn't,
I think it would be more than 25.
right, based on Chris's statement that it was more than 25 gallons, we've been based on that assumption, so that's why we,
The estimate I had was 2.5 gallons per acre, and then, I haven't done the math, the acre would be easily.
right, but that would,
be more than that.
maybe 10 acres each acre.
Subtracting all those wetlands, it may actually be right.
You know what I don't like about this? Generation has material greater than smaller than 25 gallons, but it doesn't say over how much area. We are talking a mile or something, right? 51, 31, I forget how many feet it is now, but.
5,280 feet.
How much?
A mile, we're talking
Right.
5.8 miles.
Yeah, so 25 gallons over 5.8, you see where I'm coming
We're
from?
talking 4.5 miles on just the aquifer with 24,000 feet.
Right, no, I get that, but see, this says 25 gallons, period, but that 25 gallons over an acre is a heck of a lot different than 25 gallons over 5 miles. You know, so, I mean, this is so vague.
Well,
How do you determine that? You know? I mean, I would have one decision on 25 gallons per acre and another decision on 25 gallons over 5 miles.
well, the other thing is that, as Chris pointed out, we don't know if it's 25 gallons of
No, I agree with you.
chemical or 25 gallons, whatever,
liquid.
of liquid.
Right.
I mean, obviously, if we're talking about gasoline or diesel fuel, it's easy because,
Yeah, we don't know the ratio of the chemical versus the water.
right, so, so I think we made the assumption it was more than 25 gallons, and,
Well, again, the question is it 25, okay, I know we don't know this answer, but if I put a quart of whatever in 25 gallons, I'm not putting out 25 gallons of the herbicide, I'm putting out a quart of the herbicide. So I guess what we need to know is how much of the actual chemical is going down. Because, I mean, 25 gallons, okay, it can't be greater than 25 gallons. 25 gallons of Roundup diluted in water at the ratio that it says, you know, that's, you see what I'm getting at? I know I'm going around it the wrong way, but are we talking about the herbicide or are we talking about the application amount?
Yeah, that makes a big difference, obviously, because it's diluted in 95% water.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So 25 gallons is almost meaningless. I mean, 25 gallons of what? I doubt very much you're putting 25 gallons of Roundup down on the ground, even over that 5 acres at 95 to 1.
Yeah, I mean, last time I pointed, so this was the information I had from the previous year was that they sprayed about 2.5 gallons per acre, or it was a 100-gallon mix of water. Within that 100 gallons was 4% rodeo, 4 ounces of escort, and 25% Zinca, which is surfactant. So, percentage of active ingredient is very low. Couldn't tell you exactly how many gallons that would be over the course of.
You're still mixing it, like it's still one solution.
No, I get that. Yeah, no, I know, that's a question.
Yeah.
Which are we talking about? I agree with you, you know.
I mean, do you ever spray herbicide just concentrated, or does it always dilute it in some manner? I mean, isn't that just how herbicides are spread out? You dilute it in some.
Unfortunately, hazardous material greater than a small amount. Hazardous material, I interpret is the actual amount they're putting in.
The concentrate.
Right. So if they're only putting in 4% per 25 gallons, per 100 gallons, you know, you're not, you may not reach that 25 gallons.
You might want to read the definition of hazardous in the ordinance.
Well, that's, yeah. I mean, that doesn't really get us away from.
It says solution.
It should just be.
I think it says solution. Are you talking about the solution?
this front page is the, in the definition section,
Yeah, it says definition P.
P, yeah.
I have it right here, off your website. says toxic or hazardous materials, any substance or mixture of such physical, chemical, or infectious characteristics as to pose a significant actual or potential hazard to water supplies or other hazard to human health, if such substance or mixture were discharged to land or waters of this town. Toxic or hazardous materials include, without limitation, volatile organic chemicals, petroleum products, heavy metals, radioactive or infectious waste, acids and alkalis, and include products such as pesticides, herbicides, solvents and thinners, and such other substances as defined in New Hampshire Water Supply and Pollution Control Rules, Section WS 410.04, Section 1, and New Hampshire Solid Waste Rules, HE-P 1901.03, there's a V in parentheses, and in the Code of Federal Regulations, 40 CFR 261. Waste generated by the following commercial activities are presumed to be toxic or hazardous unless and except to the extent that anyone engaging in such an activity can demonstrate the contrary to the satisfaction of the planning board, and then there's a nice long list where pesticide and herbicide application are in that list.
We're on page 201-3.
The term mixture.
Yeah, any substance or mixture of such physical, chemical, self-correcting. So, I do agree that it should have come in to us instead of being an appeal of administrative decision. It should have come in to us as a request for a special exception. And because it was not posted as that, we haven't done that. We haven't made a decision now whether we say that the administrative decision is correct, but you can make an application for special exception, and we then
My concern, I agree with you, okay?
Yeah.
This has turned out to be a bit of a bucket of words, okay? Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
So just one comment about that, what you just read there. I think the reason that, you know, the town hired this Cruslow here is to decide whether it does pose a significant threat, and that's right in there, in the definition of a hazardous material, where in the first sentence it says, has characteristics as to pose a significant actual potential hazard to water supplies. I think that's why you brought in this to determine
And then they say,
pose a significant threat or not.
right, and then they say it's assumed any application of pesticides and herbicides is assumed unless otherwise demonstrated. So, unfortunately, I think what happened was that Unitil probably should have, probably the Board of Selectmen or someone should have said you can apply for a special exception. And, you know, other than saying that Unitil should have looked at the ordinance and said, oh, yes, it does say that, and we should have.
believe the selectmen board making the decision to deny based off of the way this reads is accurate. And I don't know that it's their job to coach applicants on how to go about proceeding. That's up to them to figure out, if they so choose to proceed, how they'd like to proceed.
I understand that, but the planning boards and CBAs are required by state law to assist applicants in filing applications. A lot of times people, who own a small business, they don't understand the procedures. A large developer, they have attorneys and they know the entire procedures. In this case, it's a company that, even though it's a big company, this isn't something they deal with on a regular basis. They all started because they notified the town that they would be applying and stuff. And previously, the board of selectmen would just look at that and say, "Oh, there's another notice from."
I believe the statute also says this is the applicant, and I don't think it says, well, because they use it with lots of lawyers, it doesn't pertain.
Right. It's the applicant.
By statute,
so we do have
assist the applicant.
We have a responsibility to assist the applicant in this.
With all due respect, I sat here before the ZBA 20 and a half years ago, and we weren't encouraged on how we could proceed to get a variance for our home that we ended up building here in Kingston. It was all on me. So with all due respect, if it's your job to assist, that doesn't always happen for every applicant.
I understand that it doesn't always happen.
They have been wrong. They might have been wrong. I don't know what the statute was 20-some years ago.
Well, we also had to show that there would be no harm to our neighbors with us proceeding. And when I read this ordinance, why we even have the aquifer protection ordinance to begin with, it literally says, pursuant to RSA 674:16-21, the town of Kingston hereby adopts an aquifer protection district and accompanying regulations in order to protect, preserve, and maintain potential groundwater supplies and related groundwater recharge areas within a known aquifer identified by the United States Geological Survey. The objectives of the Aquifer Protection District are: A, first one, to protect the public health and general welfare of the citizens of Kingston; to prevent development and land use practices that would contaminate or reduce the recharge of the identified aquifer; to promote future growth and development of the town in accordance with the master plan by ensuring the future availability of public and private water supplies. We could very well have a water supply, but it might not be usable. So this really concerns me, that we could have our groundwater runoff, and I hear 31,000 feet of power line in Kingston, which is 5.8 miles, and 24,000 of that in the Aquifer Protection Zone alone is over 4.5 miles. When I look at your formula here, we'd like to spray with a 3.5-day half-life for the degrading of the chemical, which will then give us approximately 4 weeks till you feel it's fully dissipated. How ironic is it that you can do 1 month of this type of spraying, where the spraying has to be done by a licensed contractor that's certified to spray commercial pesticide for the application, and because of the trained safeguards needed. I don't think we're here to debate now that herbicides and pesticides are a chemical of massive concern for the public health and well-being. So 3.5-day half-life, approximating to 1 month that you feel it's fully dissipated, equals 5 years of when they'd want to spray again. They're eventually trying to kill the root system. And I see this as a means to an end that they would like to continue to do in order to benefit them. And I don't see this as beneficial to mankind in general. I believe water is our greatest resource that we need to now value more than anything. It's mentioned by the presenter tonight for the expert that what's been used out west and in the southwest for large areas of heavy use for the glyphosate, that there's no evidence yet, but they've had evidence and they've had court hearings where companies such as Roundup have lost due to the proof that the glyphosate, it did in fact cause cancer. And people have won these cases on a very high profile. So it concerns me that just because we're not using large amounts that is insinuated of how much is a large amount that they've used out west, where it is very dry for any type of air that's flowing to then send these chemicals elsewhere, as that was a selling point tonight on why this would be, not too bad to use. And I think that's what's bothering me in general, is that we're even entertaining the discussion of this, because we're discussing that it's not too bad, but it's still chemicals that are here that will harm and ruin our precious water aquifer zone. You look at the maps and I look at all the water, and I kind of am at a loss of how can we not sit back and appreciate nature? I feel like this tonight is a union of people coming together where we're talking about nature versus chemical, and I feel like we're at the point in the world where we recognize that man has done more harm than good with chemicals in general, and that we need to wake up and protect our assets where water is the biggest asset. I do say, if you think I'm wrong, then why is it we continue to search for life in other places in the entire universe, and that water is the key for us to even think that we'd find life? Water is life. I do believe that if we are committed to recognizing that water is life, that we need to protect that resource more than any other resource, more than oil. Man can survive if we have water. We can have as much oil as we want, we won't survive if we don't have water. To this day, people are trying to figure out ways where poor countries have water, but when they go to get the water, it's so muddy and disgusting and diseased that that's why they continue to have diseases. And they're trying to figure out ways that are the most economical ways for people to survive in other countries, to have a clean water supply. I personally have friends that are working on these actual solutions as we speak. They couldn't be here tonight to speak, but they encouraged me to go with the information that they gave to me, and they reiterated that water is our most precious resource, and we haven't even begun to see the water wars that are coming our way. They've already started with our third world countries shipping out our water, from buying up land out west to pump the water to send it to their countries to feed their livestock. It's only just begun. We need to protect our water source. I vehemently ask of you to deny this request.
By the way, Robin said, did you get your name? When you said, you just get your name and where you live?
I'm sorry, this is a continuance, and we didn't get notice for it, so I thought I was already on record to continue speaking. My name is Lorraine Massioli. We own land at 26 Old Coach Road. We are one of the abutters to the barrel factory. We also own land at 15 North Road in Kingston. I'm concerned for my in-laws that live in Kingston, my son that lives in Kingston. We have several family and friends that live in Kingston, but we own 2 properties in Kingston alone, one of which abuts the aquifer zone in the right of way.
I just want to get it on record, because
Sure.
I understood that you were here before, and she did have your name, but that's one of those things we always ask people to do. So, I'm not questioning your authority to speak. I just wanted to get it on record. Obviously, water quality is a sensitive issue, and I think it's important when we talk about chemicals. Obviously, chlorine is a chemical that is added to water to improve safety. So not all chemicals are bad. We're looking right now, and we're taking the expert advice on what the hazards of specific chemicals that are being used here are. So I think we need to go back to the issue at hand that was brought up before, and that is a procedural one. And I'm going to read from RSA 67433, the powers of the zoning board of adjustment. This is on appeal for administrative decision. To hear and decide appeals if it's alleged there is an error in any order, requirement, decision, or determination made by administrative official in the enforcement of any zoning ordinance adopted pursuant to RSA 67416, which just enables zoning ordinances. And two, in exercising its powers under paragraph 1, the zoning board of adjustment may reverse or affirm, wholly or in part, or may modify the order, requirement, decision, or determination appealed from, and may make such order or decision as ought to be made, and to that end shall have the powers of the administrative official from whom the appeal is taken. Now, in order to do that, modify it, it was my understanding that it gave the ZBA the authority to take a decision and say, the decision may have been correct, technically, but if it can be shown, if we can modify it so that if they can apply with certain safety criteria, we could modify the order. However, in this particular case, there is a vehicle for a special exception. And yes, you should have been informed of that when you checked with the planning office or the selectman's office. Yeah. That was the procedure to do. Having said that, if we elect to uphold the selectman's decision because it was correct, and then rescind this to a special exception request, I think that the background work that has been required of the special exception criteria has been done, and on a special exception criteria, we wouldn't have to have the testimony again. We have the report. We could, we've had questions. We could produce a set of findings back for this hearing, and consider special exception. But I think
I don't think we have to.
Because of that?
Because of this. In exercising power under paragraph 1, the zoning board of adjustment may reverse or affirm wholly or in part, or may modify the order, requirement, decision, or determination appealed from, and may make such order or decision as ought to be made. And to that end, it shall have all the powers of the administrative official from whom the appeal was taken. We have all the powers of the Board of Adjustment, of the Board of Selectmen, and we can make, and I'll read it again, reverse or affirm wholly or in part, and may modify the order, which is what we would do if we're going to put conditions. Right. So we can modify the order. So they have said, and that we shall have the powers and administrative official of whom it was taken. So the way I look at it, Board of Selectmen said something. We're saying we have the authority to modify your decision.
Right, but
from the Board of Selectmen.
If you read on it, says as it ought to have been, and if we're saying that they were made
Ought to have been. I don't see anywhere. I've got mine, so let me just pull mine up.
So,
okay, as ought to have been made.
Yeah, as ought to be made. So,
Okay.
so the point being is that,
So the Board of Selectmen should have added those conditions. I'm very
Well, no,
concerned,
the
we're
board-
gonna back to inventing the wheel here rather than have the solution tonight. And I think that gives us the ability to resolve the issue tonight. So the question is, what do you guys think? I mean, we're gonna send them back to have them reapply?
well,
I think that gives us the authority of the Board of Selectmen.
but if we decide, as I believe, that there's no doubt that the Board of Selectmen made the proper decision because, to deny, because it's inaccurate. They should have then said, there is an appeal process if you can prove that you're not gonna damage the aquifer, there is a special exception process. That should have been caught,
What page is that, Peter?
what's the page?
I just read there.
This, on the, this is, the Board of Adjustment in Hampshire. OSI's, it's 2-1. Chapter 2, Powers and Procedures of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. But wait a second.
Zoning Board of Adjustment,
No,
handbook, official handbook, no?
Which year do you have? Is it OSI's?
After the zoning board of adjustment, a handbook for local officials,
Yeah. And what's the date on it?
2022.
Oh, okay, yeah, mine's a little older, so, they produce it every year. So, anyways, I just lost it, here it is, it was on 2.2-3, it's, appeal of administrative decision.
Right, same thing here, okay, 2-3.
I mean,
Okay, yeah, and I even underlined mine when I read it the first time. So we can adjust, we can may reverse or reform wholly or in part, or may order, or may modify the order, requirement, decision, or determination appeal from, and may make such order and decision as ought to have been made.
but
To
what
that
they,
end, it shall have the powers and administrative official from whom, okay, so we have the powers of the administrative decision from whom the appeal was taken. So we, in effect, right now, have two hats, because we have the power of the official, of the administrative official, planning, the board of selectmen, and the zoning board.
but the Board of Selectmen,
Could have modified, but didn't.
they didn't, no, they can't.
But we have the authority to
See,
modify.
See, that's the problem, is we only have the powers that they had. They don't have the power to modify that. They say yes or no, it's yes, no, but if they say no, they should inform the applicant. There is a way of getting a special exception.
Okay, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and that would be the legal procedure for dealing with that. That's what Robert Stewart used to do when he would deny, the building inspector, when he denied something, he'd write in a letter, you're denied based on this rule, and then he'd say, you may appeal this decision to the ZBA. And if it was, you know, or you may request a variance, you tell them what the track was, and if it was something like this, we would have said a special exception.
I agree with you. They denied it, that's all they could do. But it says that the ZBA shall have all the powers of the administrative official, all the powers.
Right.
From whom it was taken, and it says that we can modify. So we have the powers, they couldn't, but we can. That's the way I interpret this.
No, my interpretation is we have all the powers that they have. They didn't have the power to approve it.
No, but they had, right, but we do.
They could deny it, and it's the ZBA who can grant a special exception.
See, I'm getting away from special exception. I'm saying we don't need a special exception because under this, we have the powers of the Board of Selectmen and can make modifications. I mean, it's you know.
Still have to follow the aquifer protection
You
order.
still have to-
No, look, it's depending on which side of the fence you're on, you're gonna agree or disagree, and that's okay.
But you still have to follow the spirit of the ordinance.
I'm sorry?
You still have to follow the spirit of the ordinance. So when we went before the ZBA and asked for special exception for our variance for road frontage, we had to prove that it wouldn't cause any detrimental harm to the applicant as well. So that's where in the spirit of the actual ordinances for the town of Kingston, they did grant us a waiver on what are the typical rules for road frontage so that we could build our home.
But not knowing that case, I don't know if that's
But
germane
what
to
I'm
this one
saying
or
is,
not.
you're the court. You're essentially the court, keeping other complaints out of the court system. You're essentially acting as a court process for the state of New Hampshire. So you're the one that gets to make the special exception, but you want to be careful not to create precedents.
I'm just saying that my interpretation here says that I have the powers of the Board of Selectmen and can make modifications, which is what I'm saying. I think if we vote, depending on whichever way we vote, we're on solid ground doing that.
Well,
No, maybe we need a vote, maybe you need a vote, can we go that way, or do we require a special exception? I don't know.
Well, 31,000 feet is a lot of land in Kingston, almost 6 miles.
I understand that, but that is not germane to what we're discussing. We're discussing whether or not it's harmful, not how many feet it is, or how long it is, or, you
I
know.
think that ordinance.
So first we have to decide, do we have the authority? Which authority do we have? You see my point, yes, no. You see his point, yes, no. Based on that decision, we're back to you.
quite frankly, I hate to say this, but, this is the question of whether, because there is a path for the special exception, and that was the path that should have been taken, we should have recognized that when the application came in, and I should have looked at it and said,
Or is this the path?
I think that's an end run, but I think.
And that's okay.
But I think that is a question for the town attorney. We could do a number of things. We could either, take all the information and, even propose conditions or whatever, and then continue it based on getting an opinion whether it has to be denied and referred to as special exception, and make an application for a special exception, in which case we have to go through the criteria, which we're essentially doing, but not officially. It's not been posted for a special exception. Or if, in fact, we have that authority and we could.
I would suggest that rather than go to an attorney and have attorney time, and time is of the essence of these people. Summer comes and summer goes. I don't have a problem of going this special exception way if we expedite this. In other words, if he has to apply for a special exception, I want another meeting very quickly and strictly have a vote on it, and then come in, vote, get out. But now we know, now we've satisfied yours that it'll be a special exception, and we're in and out, and we're not having all this again. You know what I mean? Not that it's not important, but I think we've run the spring out. I don't know, that's what I'm thinking. What do you guys think? I don't know.
Can I ask, so if you do vote for the special exception, I'm just wondering how different that's gonna be from sitting right here. I mean, I know it might be a procedural thing, but so if you go ahead and do the special exception, then it's 3 weeks or something, we're back at having the same discussion.
That's what I'm trying to get away from, the same discussion.
Yeah, so is doing that benefiting anyone? That's my question.
Here's my take on it. If we do something that is improper, it gets challenged, then not only are we wasting time because it nullifies the decision we took. We have to go through the whole process again, from scratch. If we, how should I put it? If we, I don't think we can continue this because it's a continuation as an appeal of administrative decision. And we decided that it should have been a request for a special exception. Because it's our fault that we accepted the application incorrectly, we would then renotice it at the town's expense, and you wouldn't pay another application fee. And obviously the escrow account would cover the study would be done. We'd come in and do an evaluation in whatever time frame we need, 2 weeks, of the special exception. And that would be the point at which, when we make a decision on special exception, if we decided to make one, it would be all the criteria for the conditions would have to be done then.
There would be no new information that would be submitted.
Well, let me throw the fly in the ointment here. If we're going to jettison everything we have already done and now say that this has been improper, we're back to square one with a special exception. And yes, in my opinion,
But
I mean, that's maybe where we go to the lawyer. It may be that, yeah, we'll have to start with square one again. Because we've gone down this road, but we should have gone down that road. So now we gotta go all the way back and start going down this road, which means all the time we put on that road has been for naught.
Is there a possibility to do a conditional vote, depending on what your town lawyer has to say about whether you went in one direction versus wrong direction versus the right direction? But I mean, it does sound very subjective in what you just read there, that you have the right to modify. I mean, if you
The burden of proof is on the applicant to show why special exceptions should be considered by the ZBA. The burden of proof is on the applicant. I can attest to that firsthand. Any applicant to the ZBA for special exception. So harm is harm. They're trying to convince you that this is minimal harm. We heard from the expert tonight that there's no guarantee and that this does cause harm. It depends on how much it clings to what, air, travel, what have you. Harm is harm. This is why the ordinance exists to begin with for the aquifer protection zone, so that the townspeople are protected.
But that's not what we're discussing right now. We're discussing whether or not it's, I see the point, I don't disagree or agree.
Okay,
Since Counselor?
Just as a procedural matter, I think the board's got to make a decision on special exception, and I don't think it's a public decision to make. I don't think it's a public decision to make whether it's a special exception or not. The board's got to argue that and figure that out. I think also the chair ought to just go in a certain direction, whatever the chair thinks, and then call for a motion here, one way or the other, with what people want to do, because it seems like the board's just spinning its wheels here and not coming to any resolution of the issue one way or the other. But I mean, so whatever, I don't think you can make a determination by public comment as to whether or not it qualifies as a special exception. It's a rather technical matter.
right, we can't vote on special exception tonight. So the question is, so I guess we should do this.
I think we just make a vote.
What?
I think we should make a motion and take a vote
Make a motion on what?
on whether or not to approve.
All right, so,
I mean, I don't know if there's any other option, and if it turns out, we just got, well, we didn't get stung, because it turns out we did everything right, but we just ended up in court, and the decision just came down that we weren't in error, but it did take time. I don't know what other option we have. Have them all reapply and start this all
I'd
over
like to
again?
say something as a concerned
No,
citizen.
unfortunately, this is the board's discussion time.
Well, we haven't closed public comment yet.
Oh, okay, all
We'll
right.
take one more public comment on, if it's germane to the.
Yes, my name's Dave Mascioli, I live at 15 North Road, and I've been living in Kingston since 1977, and I love this town, and I want to stay here, and my kids live here. We're not gonna know what the impact to our aquifer is gonna be years down the road. It's nothing that we're gonna find out right away, it's gonna be a long-term thing. I did hear that application is gonna be by hand backpack sprayers. There's a lot of real estate that's gotta be covered. You know, what kind of a workforce is gonna be doing this? What kind of overspray are we looking at? I also heard that the absorption is in the carbon layer or humus layer of the ground. We have very, very sandy soil here in Kingston. So how much of that is gonna just pass right through and get into our groundwater or get into our aquifer? And also, what kind of safeguards do we have as landowners or as citizens of this town, or that the people that are gonna be actually applicating this product are gonna be doing the right thing, gonna be targeting the right species and not just overspraying all over the place and just affecting our groundwater.
Yeah, please.
Just so you know, I totally hear everybody's concerns. I've been working on aquifer protection in Kingston for 25 years, so I'm very serious about it too. And I think we have to trust that the people that are doing the work are professionals. They have things that they, you know, the guidance they have provided by, and that's one of the considerations that was made. I'm not saying that, you know, what you're saying is wrong. Also, with regards to the soils, we do have a lot of sandy soils, but we also have, you know, a soil layer. There are places where we have stripped off gravel, but most of that area is down in the lower left-hand corner. Said, okay, we can do it here. So, you know, I hear what you're saying, but I do think that there have been a lot of considerations made in terms of what the actual conditions are, but I really appreciate it.
Well, you know, I work in a professional atmosphere. I work with a lot of people, and I know from personal experience that a lot of people won't do the right thing unless somebody is watching them, under the threat of somebody being watched. Otherwise, not to just do whatever they please.
Well, it's under the threat of failing their certification, though, in which case they don't have a job.
Right. Well, right.
So anyway, I'm just saying, that from a professional.
Okay, we can't, please, we only have one person, one comment at a time. Thank you for making the comment. I think we're gonna close the public comment at this time. We're gonna have to deal with the question of whether we go ahead and vote on this and and I think we're gonna do the deliberation process now. We've closed the public comment. We're gonna open deliberations on this, and the first thing is that we should determine the certain findings of fact, and I think one finding of fact is that the select board correctly denied Unitil's application to use your herbicides in the aquifer protection zone in accordance with the aquifer protection ordinance, as has been stated here a number of times tonight. We don't need to restate them, but it's prohibited, and so they did not make an incorrect decision. I think that's the answer to the appeal of the administrative decision. Now, question of whether we can modify their decision. Is with using the professional testimony that we've received, is is one that we need to discuss, and we have been discussing, so,
You need a motion first.
do you want?
Well, I think that's what we have to do, we have a motion, then we discuss. We don't discuss before the motion, right?
So what's the motion?
Okay, well, I'm gonna make a motion, and you can shoot it down or pass it or whatever, but, okay, and I'm gonna need your help on this,
All right.
okay? Because you put a couple things in there that I didn't put on mine, and I agree with you.
Oh, you're talking about the,
On the motion that I'm gonna make, you'll see in a second when it comes up with, all right? So the motion is I'm gonna make a motion that variance be granted with the following
no,
conditions.
I'm not, no variance has been requested.
I'm sorry?
There's no variance has been requested.
I'm sorry, what did I say, variance?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yep, I should have taken that out. Okay, let's make it the motion to grant the applicant, all right, under the following conditions.
Grant the applicant what?
The applicant to apply the herbicide.
So relief from the decision?
Yes,
Okay.
okay, but I'm gonna have recommendations, and these recommendations are based on Ms. Truslow's, who is our resource consultant, and she has on page 6. Do you want me to read them in? We've already talked about them, but you want me to read them into the record?
Well, here,
or do you want to just take them?
I would, yeah.
I'm gonna say those, and then I'm gonna ask you for the ones that you were talking about, the different chemicals you'd rather not use.
Right, that was, yeah.
That's why I said I needed your help. So these conditions, Unitil will confirm that the area as outlined on maps 1, 2, and 3 are areas that will not be treated. Number 2, this again, it comes from Trustwell. All right, I'm on page 6 if you're looking.
Okay, just before you need to identify, I'm gonna give you this, which
Well,
identifies the name of the document that you're referring to.
because that has to be entered, if it's gonna be part of the motion, the
Okay,
document's
so
be entered into the
I'll read
minutes.
this first paragraph, all right? Move that Unitil be allowed some limited application of herbicide within the aquifer protection zones with the following conditions found in Trustlow Consulting letter of June 5, 2023, titled Hydrogeologic Evaluation of Unitil Appeal of Herbicide Use on Transmission Lines in Kingston Aquifer Protection Zone. All right, and they will, actually you've got them written down also, but you've got some I know you want to add.
Well, yeah.
So you're looking at page 6, right?
Yeah, they're all there, yeah.
Okay, so, Unitil will conform with the areas outlined in map 1, 2, and 3, areas that will not be treated. Unitil will provide an estimate of the volume of herbicide used during the 2018 herbicide application work. Number 3 is storm drains will be identified and given a 25-foot buffer buffer from herbicide application. 4, Unitil contractor will avoid the use of low soil absorption products. Unitil will conduct the New Hampshire Natural Heritage Bureau surveys to identify areas of rare and endangered species and remove these areas from the herbicide application areas. As Sphagneides typically occur in the wetland setting, these areas should be omitted from spraying unless there is a more detailed plan to provide for application in these areas. I'm going to hold for 1 second. Ms. Tugmore, is there anything else you think that I should put in this? I just want to make sure it's coming up. These problems in it, but we're ready to discussion tonight and they have someone right here. Okay, no, I didn't mean this again, I don't want to throw you under the bus, but let's make this as safe as we possibly can. Now, I know, Peter, you had a couple things, but I'll take your amendments to my motion that can be entered, if you want to just read them.
So, under the third one, storm drains identified, given a big cover in the map. And under the next one, the Unitil contractor will avoid use of low absorption products, including Crenite F and Export FP.
No, go ahead, just add them, rather than me read it. You can add.
Okay,
I will accept your amendment. These are amendments to my motion.
so the, conditions 1, 2, 3, and 5 are conditions precedent, and must be met before final, approval. Before the decision is final. What's the term here? For approval, before the approval is final, the decision is precedent must be met. I guess it's determined delay. So you made a motion.
Yep, hold for a second.
And you for a second.
What about using, just sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine, no.
Well, that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, about using less than 25 gallons, shouldn't that be part of the condition?
Well, if you're using less than 25 gallons, it would,
I don't know if that's realistic.
yeah,
Is it not realistic?
well, if you're using less than 25 gallons, not the minimum, but it's total application, they wouldn't need to have gotten, they would have gotten released from the decision because it wouldn't have qualified. So, it's kind of a, like in there, anything that you say you do less than 25 gallons, they're looking for permission to review. With less than, it wouldn't have gone into the spot.
Should be better, you know, because I mean, we're asking to see how much we used back in 2018, if we used too much.
No, that's not, the question is if you get a statement of the volume of the surface. That getting that amount would be fair to get the flat. It wouldn't, we wouldn't be saying that it's that they would be that the amount that we would not.
And we don't know how the legislation is going. So we don't know if it's going to be less, because it's less of these species that have to treat. Because more.
Yeah, so
before
we start debating this, the question is, do you want to add that to your motion?
I'm sorry?
Did you want to add anything?
No, I'm comfortable with it, but if you would, I mean, if you want to amend it, I may, let's see what that say, but I don't know if I could accept 25 gallons.
No, yeah.
You know.
So.
We're kind of making sausage here, is that the actual motion that you think of?
This is part of the motion that, it'd be subject to verification of the, process to prove the applicant, because we're not, we're making, if you decided that you wanted to make a conditional approval of a decision, appeal of a decision, administrative decision, that, it should be, predicated upon whether the town attorney says that.
Yeah, I was thinking of that, I don't know.
And what that does is that if then they say yes, and then by the time they get the stuff in,
I think we go with what we know tonight, and you know, get it behind us, and if people feel that, you know, I don't agree with this, they have avenues. But to go to, you know, what does the lawyer think about this, what's the lawyer think about that, and to hold them up even more, there are avenues, but people don't like our decision, and that's fine, but we've got to get off the dime.
Right. Well, here's the thing, is that the reason I'm suggesting it is if we go the route and we make a decision that's not legal, then you go through that.
We can't rush this though.
I get that, but that would only be his opinion anyway, so would it necessarily stop an appeal?
It's just the process.
It's just, it's, the question is,
If we
the decision could be contingent upon,
advice? He's not gonna say yes or no, or the lawyer, he or she.
Contingent upon.
Yeah, see, that's the problem.
Upon verification of the special exception is not required.
Oh, okay, so, yeah, I see where you come, I guess, well,
Because at that point, we can then,
Yeah,
if they say no.
I get it, I get it.
You have to do a special exception, then we just put that right into the,
we could
amend the application.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying, and I think you're right. I'm just trying to process it in my brain here and get it all in the right order here. So what you're saying is we go to the lawyer says, oh, you should have done through special exception, you shouldn't have done it this way.
Right.
Then we come back and strictly change it to special exception, or do we now have to notice and start
No, you
from
have to
square
notice
one?
you have to notice that you're in a special
Okay,
exception.
but do we then have to start from square
You
one?
don't have to redo the study, you don't have to.
No, but have public hearings and,
You have a public hearing.
okay, yeah, okay.
Required. But,
Okay, no, okay, I see what you're saying, and
new testimony.
we have to be as correct as we can be. You know, so yeah,
So
I have no
let's see.
problem putting that in.
So how do you want to say that? Contingent upon?
Contingent on town council's decision whether or not this should be a special exception or.
Whether a special exception is required.
Okay, perfect. Not easy trying to come up with these on the spur of the moment.
Well, especially when.
We try to cover all bases.
Yeah. And then we can discuss.
Well, you got my motion, what do you guys
You
think?
got the motion?
You've heard enough from me.
Yeah, so the question is now, do we have a second? And if we don't, then we would go to the procedure of whether we affirm the decision.
Right.
Well, doesn't it matter what the lawyer says about how we proceed with it?
Yeah, if the lawyer says that this, because we're still have to get a final decision based on their meeting the conditions, and maybe one of the conditions is that the process is approved by the town council.
As I understand it, the lawyer says you should have gone through special exception, then we go through special exception.
Yeah.
If the lawyer says, no, you did okay, we're done.
And then there's still a 30-day appeal process. So. Anyway.
And that's why I would do it.
So, like I said, yeah, you have, you've been awfully quiet over there.
I'm good with it.
What?
Well, I said I'm good with it.
Are you going to second that?
Second that?
Second that?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And I don't think we need to read the motion all over, you've got it. Yeah.
I'm sorry it was a joint motion, but you
No,
got
I
valuable
understand,
pieces.
as long as we
You
got
had
it down
valuable
and
pieces.
it's got it seconded, and we've got all the contingencies in there.
Could we hear what the motion is to clear?
Yeah, I think the,
To grant relief for the administrative decision application and the following conditions.
Yes.
And then all those conditions.
With the following conditions, and that was found in the Trussell County letter, June 5th. And then, do you need us to read all these conditions that were in the report?
There's a copy right here if you'd like it, of the
Yeah,
stuff.
okay, we'll just read those again. This is part of the motion. Unitil will confirm that areas outlined in maps 1, 2, and 3
Page 6.
of the, it's, the title of the document's been included. The areas outlined in maps 1, 2, and 3 are areas that will not be treated. Unitil will provide an estimate of the volume of herbicide used during the 2018 herbicide application work. Storm drains will be identified and mapped and given a 25-foot buffer from herbicide application. Unitil contractor will avoid the use of low absorption products including Crenite S and Export SP. Unitil will conduct a New Hampshire Natural Heritage Bureau survey to identify areas of rare and endangered species and remove these areas from the herbicide application area. And as Phragmites typically occur in wetlands, in a wetland setting, these areas should be omitted from spraying unless there is a more detailed plan provided for application in these areas. And we said that the conditions precedent, which are the first one, second one, the third one, the fifth one, which is conducting the New Hampshire National Heritage Bureau survey on rare endangered species, are all conditions precedent and must be demonstrated before, must be proven before a final approval will be granted.
So you're allowed the glyphosate one, the rodeo?
The rodeo is one of the ones that is low, is a high soil absorption product, so it's permitted.
It is permitted?
Yes. What's that?
I think you said the cryo was not permitted. No.
What?
Was I wrong on that? Okay, never
The
mind.
Crenite,
Oh, no.
Crenite S and Export SP are the two,
Okay.
the low soil absorption products. And as far as the mapping of the trust law consultant is going to provide the mapping information, but that's procedural as part of the conditions here. So those are the conditions, and Alvin, the final condition was that the process to approve the application by no, not special exception. What are we doing? We're doing an appeal administrative decision is approved by the town attorney, and that a special exception is not required. If those conditions aren't met, then we go back for a special exception application. So. That is the motion. There's been a second.
Discussion's been done.
Discussion's done. Any other discussion on that?
Want to move the motion or?
Yeah, move the motion. I'm just trying to decide if I'm going to vote on it.
Okay, I make a, I
Okay.
think I'd like to move the motion as.
Okay, so let's, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
This is for the final vote on whether we're gonna accept as is, that's what,
Yeah, this is with all those conditions, including the one about the attorney, making a decision about whether it's legal or not. If you agree.
this is to approve to move it, to give it.
Yeah.
So I guess I shouldn't have made a motion.
Sorry, yeah, you made
That
a
was
motion
wrong
to
for me to
approve,
make a
so
motion.
voting,
I should have just said.
move the question, and we moved the question, and the question is on whether we're gonna do a conditional approval, conditional relief from the administrative decision.
You're asking for all in favor?
And I'm so all in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
I'm a no.
You're a no?
Yes.
Well, let's take that.
Okay, so I'm asking for all those in favor, say aye.
Exactly, yeah. But not me, no.
Okay, just be quiet if you're not in favor.
I got you.
Don't say anything. If you're in favor, say aye. Okay, opposed? No?
No.
No, okay. So, it fails to pass, and the vote is 3-1.
3-1, okay.
Okay, so we need a motion of what we're gonna do, whether we're going to, I'll make a motion that we deny the application, because the select board correctly ruled, the select board did not make an error in their ruling to deny the application of pesticides in an aquifer protection zone. And that the applicant can apply for a special exception.
That's true, that's true.
All right, any discussion? We need a second.
I'll second that.
Somebody
I'll
second
second that.
All those in favor, or is there any discussion? Everybody understand what we're voting on? We're voting to not deny the administrative appeal for the administrative decision.
Yeah, we're denying the administrative decision in that we're no.
And advise the applicant that they can apply for a special exception.
Okay.
Wait a minute, I'm confused. To deny the administrative decision?
Yeah.
To affirm the administrative?
No.
They were right.
Oh, sorry. We denied the appeal of the decision.
Okay.
I think
okay.
what I said was
to
deny
affirm that the board of selectmen were correct.
Yes, deny the appeal of the administrative decision.
Okay.
Affirming
not
that
denying
the
it.
select board
Okay.
would made a correct decision, and that the applicant has the ability to apply for a special exception. Okay, and you seconded that?
I did second that motion.
Okay. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. I'm gonna say aye. And aye. And all those no? Or you gonna,
I'm a no.
you're no?
Okay.
Okay, so
I've
all those
got to go with
opposed.
what our consultant said. Really.
Okay,
That's where I'm coming
all
from.
those opposed say no, and you say
That's
no.
me.
So that's 3-1 to deny
Actually, no, it doesn't
the appeal of the
matter.
administrative
Doesn't
decision
matter.
and to refer this to a special exception. And I will say that we will expedite any application for a special exception. And I'm sorry that we didn't identify that issue earlier. What's that?
I understand it's a long way around the barn, but.
Yeah, it is, it is.
Yeah, it is. I think especially now we are very sensitive to procedures here and getting done correctly. So, that's it. All right, is there any other business to come before the board tonight? All right, then we will declare the meeting adjourned, and I would like to talk to Anna about the other request, not related to this one. Oh, yeah.
That's welcome to be okay.
That was fun.
like I just
I
see
do.
that makes sense.